First of all, there are two senses of the word evolution, as
Right.
I see it. There's a very technical scientific sense in that um, Charles Darwin created the theory of evolution by natural selection.
Yeah.
And what it does is explain in a very mechanistic, hardcore way um, the origins of biological diversity, adaptation, um, and complexity
Mhm.
among living creatures on Earth. Now, that's evolution in the strict sense. There's also evolution in a more metaphorical sense, and people use the word freely, and they're certainly entitled to use the word freely. But in the more in the looser sense, evolution applies to any sort of change, particularly progressive change. And progressive, and there, so we can say that some of our social institutions have evolved, some of our ideas about this or that have evolved, the practice of medicine has evolved, meaning
Mhm.
progressive change. But it's not evolution in the strict sense of evolution by the mechanism of Darwinian natural selection. So I think it's just good to keep those two things straight.
No, I totally agree. And but something interesting as well was COVID because it taught us that we had the virus and we came up with a way to treat that virus, injecting it with RNA. But as we know, viruses also fight back and try to survive as well, right?
Mhm.
That's actually pretty scary to think about because COVID was one thing, and it it was scary because not COVID itself, but what COVID could do because as a virus, it could also evolve over time, and then the the way that you treat it will be ineffective. And like,
Yes, this is true. Viruses do evolve over time because there are creatures that replicate themselves
mhm,
using um, a, a DNA or an RNA genome. And any kind of creature, whether it's viruses are not cells, viruses are just little molecular parasites. They're not cellular creatures the way animals, plants, fungi, and bacteria are cellular creatures.
mhm,
But viruses do evolve because they replicate themselves using a DNA or an RNA genome, the two, the two genetic information molecules, DNA and RNA. Some viruses have a genome of DNA. Some viruses, like the COVID virus, have an RNA genome.
mhm,
But they evolve because as they make copies of themselves, as the
mhm,
viruses do, they make mistakes in copying their genomes, whether it's DNA or RNA. Those mistakes, we call them mutations, they introduce variation in
mhm,
a population of viruses. The viruses are competing with one another for the resources to create more copies of themselves. And
mhm,
anytime you have a creature that replicates itself with a DNA or an RNA genome, acquiring genetic variation and competing for successful self reproduction, you get Darwinian evolution by natural selection. So viruses do that, and they can adapt to challenges such as the human immune system or a human vaccine. They can they can find ways to respond to that, just the way an antelope in Africa evolves to find ways to defend itself against
mhm,
a lion or a cheetah. The antelopes evolved to become faster, and then cheetahs evolved to become faster to try and keep up with the evolution of the antelopes. And you have sort of an evolutionary competition, an evolutionary arms race. Same thing can happen with viruses. It's one of the things that makes the COVID virus, which is highly adaptable, it evolves fairly quickly. That's one of the things that makes the COVID virus difficult. And that's the reason we have to keep getting booster shots.